While I did enjoy some parts of the Peace River paddling trail down in Florida, there were some things that I wish I would have known before the trip. I'm making this video for anyone planning a trip or just for people that saw my videos of it and were like, what the heck, girl? I'll tell you what the heck. I have so much to say. Let's start with how I found the trail. First, I knew I wanted to do something somewhere where it was going to be warm in March. And for me, the only place I can reasonably get to that's going to be warm is Florida. I knew I wanted to go kayaking to just change things up a bit, and I wanted to be out for about a week. So I found a Florida tourism website that was listing a bunch of places. I reached out to a few outfitters on different trails, and this one was the one that really got back to me the most, so that's what I went with. I prepared by reading all the websites I could find, all the blogs and videos about people's personal experience doing it. I have so much to say over the course of the video. You're gonna see the sun move. Back to what I was saying, I also reached out to my outfitter with specific questions, which were, what do I need to know about the gators? They said that they've been operating since the 1960s and there hasn't been any issue with gators on that river. I asked, okay, have you had any problems with people on the trail? You know, have there been any crimes? They said no, they have not. I asked if I could filter the water in the river and drink it, and they said yes. I asked if there were any portages. They said no. And I asked about finding campsites. They said it would be harder in the north, but once I got to the south, if I just looked for evidence of other people camping somewhere, like old fire rings, for example, there was one section that you can only camp on the right-hand side, I believe. I wish they had given me a little bit more of a heads up that it would be pretty tricky to find campsites in some areas, but maybe the person I talked to just didn't know that. But even with all that preparation, if you've seen the videos I made about my first day, I looked pretty unprepared, and I know it. So let's talk about that. I just looked really scared, and that was because it's one thing to hear, oh, the gators probably won't bother you, plus seeing very big ones very close to you all of a sudden with no one else around. I think most people would be scared in that situation. It looked like I had no sense of direction, didn't know where I was going, but the dirt path leading down to the water where I put in was facing north, so I just assumed that's the direction I'm going. Then come to figure out you were supposed to go enter the water and then turn around. So that was just my bad. There were 2, maybe even 3 spots where the river forked, and one way was a dead end, the other way was the river. All the information I had read online said navigation is easy, just follow the flow of the river. But when I got there, I couldn't tell which one was flowing the most. So I just had to go down one way, see that it was a dead end, and come back. Given that was frustrating, and I didn't expect that, but looking back, it really wasn't that bad. The fact that I didn't buy bug spray, I meant to pick it up at a store that morning before the trip and just forgot. When I realized I didn't have it, I was just like, okay, well, when the mosquitoes get bad, I'll just go into my tent. So in that moment, I wasn't like, oh my gosh, I need to go get bug spray or else. It was just really nice of the person who gave me theirs. I also didn't bring any money on the river. That being said, I did bring money on the trip and just left it in my car. I just didn't want one extra valuable item to keep track of on the river. Because I was expecting a wilderness experience with no need or no opportunity to buy anything, that's why I left my wallet in my car. Next, let's talk mileage, navigation, all that. The 68 miles of trail took me 6 days. From my understanding, it was a normal flow for the river. I went in March 2024. That being said, I couldn't find that in writing anywhere, so take that as you will. It seemed like 6 days would be a good amount of time though. And that being said, I was only on the river paddling for about 4 or 5 hours a day. Part of the trail was on the All Trails app, but only a few miles of it. What I did was print off this map online. There's 6 pages of map and then some information. Afterwards, I printed that off, put it in a gallon Ziploc bag with a writing utensil, so that way it could be sitting on the floor of my kayak and I could reference it quickly without worrying about getting it wet. The outfitter also gave me 2 maps as well. Now, not every bridge shown on the map exists, and you will pass bridges that you can't find anywhere on the map. I didn't mark those down, but I did mark down my campsites. For the sake of time, I'll just put them on the screen with some notes for each section. You could screenshot it, you could write it down on your own map, just so you can have that information. All right, now let's talk costs. The biggest expense for this trip was just paying for gas to get down there, and that was $327.35. The next biggest cost was renting a kayak. For 6 days, it was $240. The food on my road trip down there and back was about $60. I also spent $60 on the food for the river, but that included 2 6-packs of beer, and I also happened to have some food already in my house that I brought, like Nor sides that were left over from when I did the AT. So take that $60 with a grain of salt. There was also a toll I couldn't avoid that was $175, so the total was about $688. My game plan going into it was just to bring 7 days worth of food, filtering water along the way. It turns out there is a place to buy food in walking distance of the river, and that is a Marathon gas station in Zolfo Springs, if you want to buy a little something along the way. I'm sure they wouldn't have the same selection as a grocery store. As far as food storage at night, I've heard there can be raccoons at the really popular campsite. That being said, I never went as far as to hang up my food. I just kind of gathered it in its bags and tried to make it less, I don't know, obvious as possible. Sometimes I put my little chair over top of the bags of food so it would be less easy to get to. And I never heard any animals or saw any evidence of them sniffing around. Speaking of animals, I think it's time we got into the gator talk. Let me take my sweatshirt off first though. These are some tips that I researched for this video. I put the videos in a playlist, so if you want to go back and see the original source, you can. First of all, please don't ever feed gators. If you're fishing, make sure you pull in your fish as fast as you possibly can. Don't leave your catches over the side of your boat. Also, splashing attracts them, so don't let fish flop around on the surface. Obviously, don't splash yourself. That's a dumb mistake I made. Gators, be scared of me. You definitely want to give them their space. Don't purposely go near them. And remember that they feel safest in the water. They're better at swimming than they are at walking around. So never get between a gator and the water. That's their emergency exit, and blocking that may freak them out. In the springtime, that's their mating season, so they're going to be on land more, and you might hear gators bellowing for territory. The babies usually arrive in June or July. The nests just kind of look like a pile of sticks, so if you see one, definitely avoid it. I think they're the few reptiles that take care of their babies, so that's kind of a fun fact. Even if you see a tiny little alligator that looks so little and cute, the mama might be around. Actually, the smallest gator I saw on my trip looked like it could fit in the palm of my hand, but as tempted as I was to go take pictures of it, I was like, okay, just leave it, get out of here. In my research, I found a lot of cases where people's dogs got eaten by alligators. So I wouldn't even take your dog on this trip. Most times, alligators leave people alone because they think we're bigger than them. I think if I laid down next to some of the gators I saw, Like they were definitely bigger than me, but because we're so much taller and they're down here, we just look more intimidating. To them, they do most of their hunting at night. They are nocturnal. They might also be active in the early morning or in the evening too. Sorry this is such weird light. Now I'm going to start talking about what to do if ... Remember that attacks are rare, and cows and dogs are, on average, they kill more people in the US in a year than alligators. First, if you're on land, one source I found said they can run 11 miles per hour, another said 25 miles per hour. Just assume they're faster than you. You may have already heard to run in a zigzag away from an alligator, because if they have to keep changing direction, that's going to slow them down. Although that is up for debate a little bit, some people say that's not necessary. They usually bite by mistake. Like sharks, they just get confused. But let's say one has gotcha and it's not letting go. You want to fight back with everything you have. Do not play dead. Its sensitive areas are its snout, its eyes. If you can find anything to stick up its nostril, that is a really sensitive area too. Its muscles that keep its jaws closed are very, very strong, so don't waste your energy trying to pry it open. Now let's say it's got you in the water. If it starts rolling, roll with it. They do get tired easily because they are ambush predators, and eventually they're gonna figure out you want to live more than it wants to eat you. It can get easier meals somewhere else. That's the information I found online. If you're an alligator expert and you disagree, please let me know in the comments and I'll pin it so other people can see. Now, alligators' cousin, crocodiles, are much more aggressive and a whole different story. They don't live on the Peace River, but remember, if you're somewhere else in Florida or in Australia, crocodiles are a totally different thing. Now, I know all of this is kind of scary to think about, but I did see people in the Peace River swimming and fossil hunting. You can pay to get a permit, you can sift and find shark's teeth, fossilized plants and stuff. So there are still people that feel totally comfortable in this river. And they are really cool animals too. They have a second set of translucent eyelids. And they were around the same time as the dinosaurs. What I want to know is, what could kill the dinosaurs, some of which lived in the water, but not the alligators? Mysteries. Okay, quick break because my camera is running low on batteries and I gotta get out of this sun. Several hours later. We just talked about gators. Let's talk about some other animals. As far as snakes, there are dangerous snakes that live in the area. However, it's not like the Everglades where they're everywhere. I didn't see any on my trip, but it is something to be aware of. Other animals that exist in the region, Florida panthers do exist, but they are very, very rare. I saw wild boars, I think, or wild hogs on my first day, but I made noise and they ran away. And if you enjoy seeing wildlife, this is a great place for it because there's a lot of turtles sunning themselves. There's tons of birds you can see. There is fish flopping around in the river. My first days I was scared because I was always like, what made that splash? Come to find out, it's usually a fish that just jumps out of the water. I don't really know why, but it happened all the time. And there's also cows that live on the farms nearby. Someone asked me how scary it was at night, and to be honest, it was a little scary, not gonna lie. Like I said, there's fish that just make splashing noises, and my first days I was like, oh my gosh, a gator's coming out of the river to get me. There's birds and other animals that are moving around in the plants. I always went to bed with a feeling of how the heck am I gonna fall asleep, but somehow I always drifted off. The second campsite I stayed at was definitely the most jungly around me, and I woke up in the night to hearing something moving outside my tent, so I was laying like this, and then I sat up real fast, and then I heard it scurry away and splash in the water. From the size of the splash, I don't think it was a huge gator. It could have been a small one, or a raccoon that went to the water for some reason. My first night, there was some animal that was sniffing around in the tall grass by my tent. I could hear it getting closer to me, so I just clapped my hands, made as much noise as I could, and it took off. I was concerned about people too, accidentally camping on somebody's land and them getting mad, someone with ill intentions finding me, but wherever I camped there was always cell service. So I had a lifeline at least. And because of every night being something I just had to get through, being in such an isolated area and not being as comfortable with gators as I thought I might be, in the beginning I thought about, okay, do I want to end the trip early? Do I want to get picked up? It was only $40 to do that, and I was like, that's within my budget. I could do that. My thinking was that I'm going to get a chance to be out in nature again, and I bought myself an opportunity to go kayaking on this river. I didn't sign a contract to do it. I'm not locked in. I ended up being curious. What did the rest of the river have in store? I knew that the further south you went, the more people I would see, and the wider. Actually, I didn't know that in the beginning, but the river did get wider, so the gators were further away from me, and I ended up enjoying some of it, even though some parts were also really difficult. I think toughness is kind of like physical attractiveness in the sense that our society makes it seem really important, but I keep trying to remind myself that that is not something I value, not something I find important, even though, like, when you compare yourself to others and that kind of thing, you want to be tough, but you don't have to be. For a better experience than what I had, one, you're watching this video, so you're going to know more than I did. Two, if you can get someone to go with you, that would have helped me so much more. I've always thought that if you don't have someone that can go on big long adventures with you, that doesn't mean you have to stay home your whole life. But on this trip, if you can, it would really help. And if you want to avoid the narrow section that was really isolated, had a lot of gators, that was from Bartow to Homeland. And if you want to skip the downed trees that I had to go underneath, maneuver around, that started just after Homeland. It got better after Fort Meade, and it was completely no more down trees after Bowling Green. If you just want an easier trip than what I experienced, I would start Bowling Green or even south of that. As far as the time of year, I don't know of a peak season for this trail. I went in March, and there was one cold night, 3 pretty hot afternoons, but you know, not too bad, and it never rained, so that was wonderful. As far as the kayaking aspect, I had been on an overnight kayak trip before, but nothing to this extent. I noticed my hand muscles and my wrists got sore the first or second day. Other than that, it wasn't really too bad, although actually now that I say that, I noticed I needed to sit up straighter when I was paddling. In fact, looking at my kayaking form in general, it was pretty bad. But if I would have sat up straighter, my back would be feeling much better towards the end of the trip than it was. When it comes to gear, I was really excited I didn't have to worry as much about weight as I do when I'm backpacking. But that being said, a heavy kayak is harder to maneuver than an empty one. I've usually paddled around empty kayaks before, so that's what I was used to, just being out on the water for a few hours. And I was like, oh, this is a bit more difficult, I mean. One heavy thing I was very glad I brought was beer. To keep it cold, I just kept it in this insulated lunchbox. The first couple of days, it was actually colder than expected. Once there was less beers, less cold things in there, insulating itself, of course, you know, it got kind of not cold towards the end, but it was fun. That's also where I kept my cream cheese for bagels and my ham, cheese, mustard, and tortillas. Not like tortillas need to be kept cold, but I wanted all my lunchtime wrap ingredients in one place, and the ham got a little weird towards the end, but it was fine. I think a lot of times we think things need to be refrigerated when they're actually okay to just be kept cool for a while. Make sure you're putting on sunscreen, putting it on multiple times a day, and please wear your life jacket. Now, I know that might seem hypocritical if you've watched my videos from the trip. The life jacket they gave me was like the orange rectangle-y kind, and moving in that, paddling, that would have scratched me up so bad. They make life jackets for kayaking specifically if you have that in the budget, but the one they gave me, I was just like, oh, maybe I'll put that on a little later, and I never did. Now looking back, I'm like, that really wasn't the best decision, so I'm telling you now, wear your life jacket, or PFD, whatever you want to call it. The outfitter I went through was called Canoe Outpost Peace River. I do wish they had told me a little more, gave me some more information before I was out there, but it sounds like they're used to only people that are really familiar with the area, Florida locals, doing that long of a trip. Sounds like most of their customers just go out 1 or 2 days. That being said though, they were nice. The pricing was straightforward, and everyone I talked to was really nice to me. I wish I would have asked for someone that knows the most about the river and the route I was doing, and talked to them and said, what do I need to know for this trip? Instead of asking whoever answered the phone kind of yes or no questions. It is going to be harder to connect with that person. It's going to take up their time, but I wish that's what I had done. A question I got on my videos a lot was, how was I filming? When I was on the kayak itself, I used, that's the lens cap, I use it Insta360, which is, if you do a certain setting, it's filming in all directions, and then you go into an app and edit, okay, I want this direction to be showing up, and then at this second, turn the camera around and see my reaction to it. If anyone out there is going to get this camera though, make sure you don't set it down because the lens gets scratched up so easily. Always put your lens cap on. That probably seems like an obvious thing I should have known. Rookie mistake, but oh well. I used my Nikon Z30 to film when I was at campsites, and I brought my drone down to Florida with me, but I forgot the SD card. Again. Status, no SD card detected, but I put it in there. Oh, I in fact did not. There was definitely a lot to figure out the hard way on this trip, but that being said, it was also very beautiful, a unique landscape, full of wildlife, and it was really peaceful. It lived up to the name. I hope this video is helpful to you. Have a good rest of your day, and thank you for watching.